phase you actually go into investments to them.
Sure.
But I guess if you go in early in a company, they don't perhaps have that much of a product, they don't have that much of finance to really speak about. I guess you look more into the team then, or?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Team is definitely number one.
Yeah.
We all know at pre-seed, you might need to sort of pivot a couple of times before you reach that point of product market fit. And then you really need to be sure about the founders and that they have that endurance that it takes to take it to product market fit.
Is that the main thing, that the founders have the drive, the endurance to really drive the company through whatever kind of hardship they will see?
That's definitely one thing, and I think especially in times like these when it's a little bit rougher out there, endurance and resilience is very important. But I also look a lot at sort of founder market fit. Have they spent time, have they built experience that is relevant to the market they take on? It doesn't necessarily always have to be from that customer segment or that exact vertical. Sometimes it can actually be good if you have experience from, say, Spotify, and you take those learnings to another subscription market. That's fine. But you need to have some sort of experience and deep understanding on the problem you're taking on.
So you said founder market fit. So if I'm trying to understand what you mean with that, but do you mean basically that the founder should have some experience from past that is relevant for the market they're going into?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we like that. And we look for, there's a lot of VC buzzwords coming your way now.
Go for it.
But we look for outliers, like founders that have shown some sort of outlier qualities in their past. Because, I mean, building, and we're sort of unicorn hunters in a way. We look for those companies that can be the next Spotify. And to build something like that, you often, have to go against a lot of people saying, no, you have to convince people to join your vision. You need something very extra. You need those sort of outlier qualities. And maybe go ahead. One final thing that's super important, I think, is that you can convince others to join you on that mission. And you realize what are my weaknesses that I need to have other people's joining to fill out for what I'm lacking in experience. And convincing someone to join at, a startup that doesn't have funding yet, that is going to take over the world in something super transformative, that takes a special skill set, I think. Yeah.
It does. And I think I like what you said about the founders being able to convince others. I guess basically they should be leaders in some way.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Leaders in terms of being to invest or convince the investors, like people like you. But I guess also being able to recruit people, talented people going forward.
Yeah, super important. And I think especially in sort of applying, when we're looking at AI, it's going to be a talent war. And you're going to need to be able to attract the very best, I think, to win.
Yeah, exactly.
So having that sort of magnetism almost, both from the technical founder and, of course, the other founders as well. I
remember when I joined Cultorion, that was a number of years ago, many years ago, but still they had a tech founder or two founders that were really knowledgeable. And I must say I got very hooked just by the first meeting with the founders, and that's why I joined very early in that company. But I think that's so important, and they were able to recruit so many talented people coming to that company. And I think that's some skill that you mentioned that I think a lot of people don't recognize. Being a leader to convince people, as you said. Is probably one of super important one.
Yeah, reaching that talent density early enough, because then it makes it so much easier to recruit going forward.
Interesting. Awesome. I look forward to hearing more about these topics. But before that, very welcome here.
Thank you.
Rebecka Löthman Rydå, if I said that correctly.
Rydå, yeah.
Rydå, Swedish. You're an investment director at Inventure, right? And a lot of experience from the past in different companies, and I try to look through a bit, the number of boards that you've been on, but I mean, you're a true professional board member. I'm not sure, how many boards have you been on during the years, you think?
I counted number of SaaS boards recently, and that was 12, and then been on a couple of other ones, maybe 15, 16, not sure,
Yeah, that's truly impressive. But before we go into more of how Inventure works or how investments work or what people should look for when they want to pitch to a company like yours, Can you describe more about yourself? Who is really Rebecka Löthman Rydå?
So I'm definitely a nerd at heart, and true sort of sci-fi nerd, and that I think that shines through in sort of my investment interests as well. And probably why I ended up looking a lot into sort of data, AI, and these sort of things. Ended up as a VC a little bit by accident back in the day. So I started my career in Ernst & Young, then wanted to go operational and worked as a CFO.
Yeah. And you worked as a CFO for a time, right?
Yeah, for a little bit. Then became sort of interim CEO of this group of companies that had an investment organization as well. So I started working a lot more with the investment side of things and really liked it. And really got hooked on sort of dealing with the founders and their challenges and being helpful in their journey early on. So then I got the opportunity to do that full time. And
how long ago was it that you started doing
probably
investments?
8 years ago, yeah.
Impressive.
Maybe even 9. God, getting old.
So how was that time? When did you start moving into investments? What happened at that time?
So back then, one thing that really stood out was there were a lot less women in VC for sure back then. I had a little WhatsApp group with my girlfriends where I'd send photos of conferences and events I'd go to with all men, take photos of bald heads and, blue shirts and
was that a problem
jackets.
at that time?
It was, I think, yes. It's definitely always a problem if you don't have enough diversity in an industry.
But for you personally, was it a problem to...
I wouldn't say it was a problem for me back then. And I had a great sort of leader and founder of this fund that I worked with that gave me a lot of confidence and responsibility and let me grow into an investment role without, just following my own sort of passion and allowing that. So I had good mentors early on that helped me along the way.
Awesome. And perhaps you can you just describe a bit more, what is really Inventure? What do they do?
So Inventure is an early stage VC fund that's been around for about 15 years, founded in Finland originally.
Nice, in Finland.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And just closed our fourth fund before summer at 150 million euros. And been investing very much as a generalist. Where we try to be the best is at the early phase of company building. And in the most investments we've done, I think we've done probably near to 100 investments by now. We have
100 investments during how long time?
15 years.
15 years.
Yeah. We have been the first institutional VC investor on board. We invested in Volt. They were about 6 people back then. We invested in a company called AIAW that we sold to Stellantis earlier this year. I think they were also 5 or 6 when we invested. So we're used to that early phase when it's a lot about sort of failing forward to reach product market fit. And I think it takes a special kind of investor to get that phase and be the right kind of support through that phase. Because I sometimes see when VC investors come from another background, if it's PE or growth, and do their first early stage investment, you end up having someone on your board asking you, why haven't you met the budget, and giving you a hard time. Well, I kind of see it as a good thing. We didn't meet budget. That means we've sort of disproven this hypothesis. What's the next hypothesis we're testing? So you're constantly supporting the founders in their, failing fast enough journey.
Fast, that's good.
And we try to support, especially when it comes to talent. So that's one thing where I think a lot of VCs say probably this, that they're active investors and are helpful. But we try to be especially helpful when it comes to talent.
What do you mean talent? Like recruitment?
Recruitment. Because it's one of those things we've seen that early on it's such a common bottleneck to scale fast enough. And it's not just about hiring fast enough. It's often about hiring the right kind of talent and knowing what great looks like when you're a sort of first-time founder. And there we can really support. And we have one person in the team just doing that with our companies.
So that's the way you do it. You have an recruitment expert that can basically guide and coach the companies.
Yeah, exactly. And we've for a couple of years now put away a bit part of our management fee to having people in the team just working with portfolio. So of course, if I invest in a company, I'm going to be helpful. and I'm gonna, be your sounding board, and I'm gonna help you with my network as much as I can. But besides me, we also have other sort of hands on deck helping you succeed.
That's something I'd like to hear more about. What do you do after an investments that you made? And it sounds like you're very involved in helping the company. If we just, take the recruitment track a bit more, because I think that's such an important part and something I spent probably 15 years on myself in trying to recruit the right people. What is the trick? Or can you give some examples perhaps, or if someone is listening now, they just have their startup, they want to hire some people, what would you recommend them to do or do not do to find the right talents?
Not hire the first person that comes along. I mean, that's an obvious advice, but I think sometimes you feel a bit rushed. You've just raised a lot of capital. You have the pressure to show results as quickly as possible. So you go out, recruit, and you don't spend enough time making sure you really found that sort of amazing talent that is both a good sort of fit culture add to your team and sharing your values and vision, but also has that like stellar talent pedigree to add something to your team. Because I think it can be such a game changer early on, as we discussed initially, if you get high talent density, because that will attract other talent to join you.
Exactly.
And if you get it wrong too early and you don't have that talent density, that's going to come back and haunt you in future recruitments.
This is such an interesting topic, I think, at least. But okay, so you want to get some talents on board early on, I guess, and people that also can help you with other recruitments in some way. What about things like should they hire senior versus junior people? How do you from a compensation point of view actually be able to get talents on board? Any thoughts about this? If you take the balance between junior and having more senior people for a startup, let's say, that just got funding from you guys, what should they think in terms of balance junior and senior people?
I think it depends a little bit on the role. I think I've seen many companies do the mistake of too early hiring too senior a sales leader. And that I think so often does not work out. Because I think early on, you're always going to have adverse selection when it comes to the best sales people you can hire. Because if they're leaving, if they're a really good salesperson, they're leaving a massive bonus that they're getting in their current company to go to your small startup. Right. There's an adverse selection principle there that often plays out. And I've seen that many times. And I think in the early days, you need to have sort of founder-led sales. Even if you're a technical co-founder, you got to learn to sell. And even more probably if you're building something that's fairly technically advanced, you're probably going to be the best person selling it in the first 2 years.
What do you think about the founder specifically in a company? So you could have founders for a company that is an engineer or a tech background, or you can have a more of a or economical background or a sales background, etc. What is your preferred, or do you have a preference there, when you look at the founders for a company and how you think they should, complement that with recruitment in some way?
So I think founders can come in all shapes and sizes, and sometimes they can be more heavily towards the commercial side of things and sometimes more heavily towards the technical side of things. But we do really love betting on founding teams where you have diversity in the founding team. So you have 2 or 3 founders that bring, their own skill set and hopefully very complementary skill sets. So that's the preferred choice, I'd say.
So the best setup would be like a technical founder combined with more
commercially savvy one, I'd say. And if I were to choose one, my personal preference would probably be more towards the technical side of things. Especially since investing a lot into sort of data and AI and software, I think it's so hard to hire that talent early on.
I guess just a reference to Spotify there with Daniel Ek, that was the technical engineer, and then with Martin Lorentzon, more of a, I'm not sure I should say commercial, but he was a different type of personality that I think complemented Daniel quite a lot at that time. Awesome. So recruitment-wise then you mentioned diversity. which of course I think at least is surprisingly important. Any thoughts there? Do you have? It's so easy, I think, also from startups, especially if they're more tech-oriented, AI-based kind of startups, that they don't have the best diversity. Is that something you think about when you look at investments, or when you speak to people and do the due diligence that they have?
No, for sure. And I believe, and there is a lot of research showing this as well, that diverse teams perform better.
Yeah.
And I really believe you make better decisions as well if you have a diverse team. And it's not just, it's gender, it's also experience and where you come from and all sorts of backgrounds, like combining as much diversity as possible. And that the founders are aware of that early on and striving to achieve that. Because that's also, I think, speaking of common mistakes, that you look at your sort of circle of friends and your small network for your first hires. And don't sort of raise your eyes a little bit looking for, a diverse complementary skill set that could really add something new to your team.
Yeah, I think there is an art form to doing recruitment and how to do interviews and what's not. So that's a very hard, but I wish.
And that's why we help
yes,
as well in that. Yeah.
That's perfect. So basically, how does that coach or that expert go in? Do they basically speak to the managers there, and how does it work?
Yeah, exactly. They can do, a first call to identify what are your specific challenges that you're going through right now and how can we be helpful. And then the actual help can look in many different ways. If it's about helping find the right, profile definition, you might not know yet exactly what you need. What do I need for my management team? I feel I'm missing something. Should I hire a VP of sales, or should it be a head of marketing? Should it be a CRO? Like defining what you actually need at a certain phase that she can be very helpful with.
Cool. I'd like to move into the topic that we actually started speaking about before we turned on the stream here, but before you actually decide to do an investment, you go through a number of checkups and due diligence procedures. Can you just describe a bit more? Do you have a special way, or how do you evaluate companies before you make a decision on investing or not?
I think it's quite similar to a lot of other VCs. The number one thing we look for is team and potential. So, because we're a 150 million euro fund, all the investments we do sort of have to have the potential to return the fund, which means
a single investment should, in theory,
be able to return the fund.
So if you invest 1 million euro, it should have the potential to do 150x.
Yeah. At least when you look at market sizing, we need to be sure that you can build a €1 billion company in the space you're in. So I think the two most common reasons we say no is either team or potential. And then of course we go into product and your business model and all of those things as well to build conviction on you actually offering something that is more than just an incremental improvement. Really like companies offering something that's like significantly better solution, targeting really, really painful problems that are big.
I'll just go back to what you said. It sounds a bit strange when you hear it, that a single investment should be able to give a return that basically are the full size of the fund. Is someone that said that? I don't recall who really, but wasn't it some person that said that, or is it?
I think that's sort of VC math in a way. There, especially at the early phases, we do both pre-seed and seed, and the failure rate is still quite high.
Okay.
And
I
there's
think
only
it was
going
Peter
to be
Thiel or something that said something similar at one point.
Yeah, probably.
Awesome. Okay, so basically you look through the team, and how do you look through the team then? What do you look for in the composition of the team in a startup that you want to invest in?
So we look for founders that have a deep knowledge of the problem they're taking on, an understanding, and have spent the time thinking about this problem, and probably has a unique insight at some point how to solve this in a new way. And we tend to like sort of the contrarians of the world, the ones that sort of dare to launch something that others will go a little bit, what's this? Like, you're not it's not immediately obvious because it is a very new kind of solution.
We usually use a term on this podcast quite a lot called first principle thinking, coming from Elon Musk and others. Is that the type of person you're thinking about, that it doesn't just follow the standard way of doing things, but
very much so. Yeah, very much so. And have spent time getting to that first principle thinking around the problem they're taking on. Yeah. That's something we really like. Yeah. And also, as mentioned before, like ability to attract others on their journey that complement their skills and really can show that they can convey this big vision and convince me and convince others to join this quest.
So people that are basically leaders, I mean, you're putting a lot of pressure now, I think, in a lot of startup companies that want to approach you and get funding, but people that are, or how would you describe it? People that are, for one, have a new way of thinking about solving a clear problem that they can identify and describe clearly, but also having then the leadership of being able to convince people like yourself and other people they should recruit. Is that basically the core?
True. Yeah, I think that summarizes it well. And contrarians. People that dare to challenge sort of status quo and dare to challenge, our way of doing things. Have
any
a better
red
way
flags,
of doing
anything that you would say, oof, I saw this kind of personal trait or some other part of a person that makes you completely unable to invest in a company or a team?
I mean, I've had sometimes founders lie early on, even if it's smaller things about pretending to be, about having been something on your CV, for example, that you actually weren't. Or I'm a little bit sensitive to if you fake, sometimes you try to fake it till you make it, but if you fake too much towards me early on, you sort of lose that early trust, and that's so important in the early phases that I feel we can build a relationship of trust. So that's, for me, is definitely a red flag.
So honesty and transparency is something also as well.
Yeah, for sure.
If we just take potential then as well, and I guess you basically are thinking about having the ability to become a €1 billion company in some way. How do you determine that then? You have to make some kind of judgment on this can actually have that potential, or is it the team that should, convince you, or how did you decide? I guess
it's both. We always make our own analysis as well, and there's no magic formula to this. But you have to look at a couple of things. We think a lot about sort of macro drivers and trends, and what's currently some of the themes that we believe will be sort of the next generation of unicorns or the next generation of tech companies reshaping our
give some
industry.
Something you've seen in the past that is a macro trend, or?
Yeah, I mean, it can be what we're seeing in generative AI now. For sure, that's the obvious one, since it's an AI podcast. Yes. We've also done a deep dive into sort of the energy transition with so many macro wins, in favor of the need for new solutions in the energy markets. I think both when it comes to, our industry, when it comes to our houses and solving the biggest problem in climate. So we did a deep dive on energy to sort of define what we're looking for there. And we also share quite often sort of our blog posts about what we're excited about in an area. And then always happy to be challenged as well. We know everything is changing so quickly, so even if we're wrong, I think it helps, hopefully, that we're sharing sort of this is what we're thinking at the moment.
That makes perfect sense. I think the ethical question and climate, etc., is something I'd like to get back to you shortly. But before that, if we just think about the due diligence and what you really consider, and if someone is listening and thinking, what should I really focus on in a pitch? The number one is the team, then to show off the potential. Anything else that they should think about?
Really, really show that you've done the work. Because I think quite often, founders come and pitch and they haven't really spent enough time sort of interviewing potential customers, understanding the competitive landscape in detail. I don't want to be the one telling you this is a competitor. I want you to challenge me and say, actually, Rebecka, that's not a competitor. The ones I want to be blown away by their knowledge into their market. Yes. And because I think early on when I started investing, you almost get excited when you can add a lot of knowledge and advice to founders early on. Now I'm kind of the opposite. I kind of want founders to challenge me and show that they have more knowledge than me in this specific market.
Oh, perfect. So thinking more than on the ethical sides, do you have any such considerations saying that you would not invest in a certain type of company in a certain sector, or do you have some sectors that you are especially fond of that you may not think have the best team or the best potential, but you still think is important from a more ethical point of view or moral point of view to invest in? What's your thinking around like ethical considerations?
I mean, our LPs have put requirements on us as a fund that we can't do certain investments into like weapons or tobacco or pornography or these things that are clearly sort of, at least for us now, I guess, on the weapon side, defense is opening up. Some LPs are becoming more favorable towards that specific segment, but we can't do that.
Okay, so you still can't do that even though it would help like Ukraine or something in
not if it's weapons, no. But yeah, so we do have those requirements. And then I would never do an investment just for the ESG if it didn't have the team and potential. Like you mentioned, you still need to return your fund. So we would never do anything that we didn't believe could have that return potential.
Okay. But something that you perhaps are still, is a bit more biased towards investing in. Is it something that you do prefer to say that we really want to help climate or something else?
Well, yeah, we are an active investor into climate tech and sustainability in general, and about a third of our fund will actually go towards sort of climate tech and sustainability. Yeah. So we are actively investing and looking for investments in that. We've invested in a company called Capital AI that does energy, actually a bit of AI in that one as well, energy optimization.
Super interesting. If we move to a bit of a different topic, and this is the one that I am personally rather interested in as well, and I guess you focus on the Nordic market, or
Nordic, new Nordics, which is Baltics.
Okay, including the Baltics as well. If we start with the question, like, how do you rate the new Nordic market compared to the rest of the world? If you take it, like for one, startup climate and also the current state of the larger companies that do exist there. You see what I mean? Or I can elaborate further. But in general, what do you think the current state of the Nordic market is?
We're still, of course, very excited about the Nordic and Baltic market when it comes to startups. And we're seeing that the ecosystem over the years we've invested has matured a lot, especially in sort of Sweden and Denmark and also beginning to do so in Estonia and the Baltics as well. That you're seeing this talent dropping out of some of the big unicorns to start new companies. Yeah. Similar to what was happening and still happening, of course, in Silicon Valley. Once you have a crucial mass of unicorns and of the sort of highly valued tech companies, you have enough people who have seen that journey and gone through that journey, become inspired to start something on their own, and with the experience, having gone through, a fast growth journey, that gives a very nice ecosystem of founders coming.
Because if I just give some of my own thoughts here, for one, I think, we have rather good educational systems in Sweden and in the Nordics. And we have a lot of people coming out of universities that are highly skilled. I think also we have a rather good startup climate, especially in Sweden and in Stockholm. But then if you look in Sweden and Europe in general, there are very few high-valued tech companies. And if you compare it to the US or China, they have a few number of extremely wealthy tech companies. What's your thinking there? Why is that the case? Why don't we see any, we have some, high-valued companies in Sweden, I guess, like Spotify and Klarna and the Skype and whatnot. But still, it's not to the scale that US and China has. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I think compared to the US, it's also a maturity question. We have been a little bit behind when it comes to the whole ecosystem. And that also means that I think there's more potential in Europe and the Nordics now. Because in the US, we've seen sort of the peak of the investment cycle. Well, here I think there's a lot more potential. But unfortunately, I also think we've seen quite a lot of talent drainage to the US.
Yes.
I mean, if you look at, for example, some of the most successful data and AI companies in the US, often the talent is from Europe or from France, like Snowflake and Databricks. Databricks founders are Swedish, like we discussed before. Yeah. So we have lost a lot of great companies, especially in data and AI, from Europe to the US. And I think because the access to capital has been so much better in the US and still is. I looked at, I think it was this week, or if it was last week, I saw the number of capital invested into generative AI the past 3 years, I think it was. And 5% have been invested in Europe.
Really?
Out of 5%? All of the capital. I think it was 1 billion compared to 22 billion or something. Mind-blowingly small in relation to all the capital going into generative AI. And then, of course, there's a lot of, not all of those 22 billion going to turn out successful. There's a lot of hype in this as well, but some will. And I guess the likelihood that they're in the US now compared to Europe, if 22 versus 1 is being invested into companies there, and of course AI companies are seeing that. Maybe I should start my company in the US instead, because obviously that's where the investment is.
Investment in terms of having venture capital, I guess,
venture capital,
in a large extent. But and great to see that you actually are supporting them, the Nordics, and are trying to counteract, I guess, this kind of imbalance that we are seeing. And I just want to say I very much agree with what you said, that once a company starts to become rather successful in Sweden or Europe, one of the US tech giants are usually just acquiring them, and we have a brain drain or talent drainage, as you said, to other companies, and that's sad. Do you think that will continue, or do you think we will start to catch up in some way in the Nordics?
I hope we will catch up, and I hope that we'll see a lot of the VC funds that are now active in the Nordics survive these tough times, because I think we need that. We need that VC tech startup ecosystem to really, really flourish for a couple of more years to really build that strong enough ecosystem and make sure that survives.
Yeah, I mean, good. I mean, I think you said also that it's potentially an advantage to then invest in the Nordics, because we have a potentially higher potential to find the companies here, or do you see it as a mainly negative side or a positive thing? Like, we don't have as many highly valuable companies in the Nordics. Is that an opening for companies to?
In Sweden, we have the most unicorns per capita still. Yeah. So, I mean, we do have quite a lot of high valued companies compared to how big a country we are. So I think, and what we're seeing as well is some of the more experienced VC funds coming out of Sweden and the Nordics are now so big. They more and more need to look outside of the Nordics and building their organization all over the world these days, which sort of leaves a little bit of a gap for someone who's the most active in this local market and want to be that sort of local lead that you have on board early on. And that's the gap we're planning to fill.
Awesome. So you mentioned also that it is currently a tough time. And I guess you're referring to the war or being post
the markets
or the market. What do you mean with tough times? Why do you think currently it's a tough time?
I mean, interest rates are still high.
Yes,
inflation rates, and I mean, at the same time, in Sweden, we have, I think, pending almost housing bubble as well, right?
Yes,
with 60% of households sitting with flexible interest rates, which is hurting them a lot. So consumer spending will probably get a real hit eventually. We haven't really seen it yet. In the US, I saw numbers this week that they're still spending quite intensely, the consumers, but also then building up consumer debt significantly. And I think this is, we haven't seen this blow up fully yet. And with the US Fed sort of prolonging the timeline for when interest rates might normalize as well, they postponed that last announcement. I think we're going to be in this high interest market for longer than a lot of us were hoping, which means, of course, IPO windows will stay closed or semi-closed, and number of M&A transaction will maybe not be as high or as big as we hope.
Is it harder for a startup to get funding these days because of the high interest rates, you would say?
Yeah, we're definitely seeing that in the later stages. Yeah. So if you look at funding for growth stage companies, has shrunk immensely in the past year.
What do you mean? Can you just elaborate a bit more what you said? So is it...
It's a lot harder, and it's a lot less capital being invested.
Yes. Okay, less capital.
Yeah, less capital.
But do you also then go more into preserving the investments you have rather than making new investments? Is that like a choice you make at Inventure as well?
I think not for us. And in the early phases, it looks better. I think it's easier, a little bit easier. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's a little bit easier to raise capital early in pre-seed seed. And we've actually seen quite a lot of later stage funds do more in the early phases. I think because they're finding it a lot difficult investing in sort of a C or D round when the IPO window is still pretty short. It's, the time to exit is a lot shorter compared to pre-seed and seed. So I think it's the best time to invest in pre-seed and seed now. And we've seen in previous sort of crises, some of the best companies were built during that time.
Why is that, do you mean? Why is it better to invest seed and pre-seed? Perhaps you can just define what is really a seed and pre-seed and A round, B round, C rounds, etc.
That keeps changing. I think when I started investing, what we call a seed was an A round back then. Yeah. So it keeps changing and trending. No, but what we talk about when we say pre-seed, it's often only a team, maybe an MVP of a product and a big vision. And then when it comes to seed, usually you have your product up and running. You might have some initial users or customers or pilots ongoing, and you're raising maybe 2 to 5 million euros.
And then the A round is a step in that, and you should have traction and some kind of...
Yeah, maybe €1 million in ARR. And a couple of happy customers. You found product market fit. Yes, and you're ready to raise money to sort of scale, basically.
Okay, so you should be able to demonstrate through sales or the revenue that you have that this is a product market fit.
Yeah.
And you just need funding to scale it up at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that you, before you joined Inventure, also were focusing a bit more on C and D rounds and more late stage.
No, I think I've mainly done sort of early investments, occasional sort of A rounds, but quite focused on
early stage.
Yeah.
Okay. And if we just take angel investments, do you define that different, or is that basically a pre-seed, or what is an angel?
So pre-seed, all these definitions. No, often at pre-seed we do those rounds together with angels.
Okay.
Occasionally you might have had angels on board before you do sort of a slightly larger pre-seed, just to be able to quit your job and get started. But yeah, depends.
Cool. Okay, so a startup that have an awesome idea, they perhaps have some MVP of a product. They shouldn't be afraid, I guess, to approach you and say, we have an awesome idea, and it's still, given the tough time we had, a possibility to get some funding. Yeah,
and I mean, we're super active. We're investing at the same pace as we always have been. So we've done 20 investments already in the new fund. So we're definitely open for business.
20 investments during what time?
About a year and a half, yeah. No, so we're really active.
Okay, so going to, now startup is getting excited here, and they say, we really want to approach Inventure, and you, Rebecka, and they just thinking, how should you do that? Well, they need to do a pitch, I guess, right?
Yeah. We've actually shared our pitch deck template on our website.
Oh, really?
You don't need to use it, but if you don't know how to make a pitch deck, you can use that one. But I think the magic doesn't necessarily lie in the pitch deck. It's more back to what I was talking about before, that you can show that you have that deep knowledge. You can convince me on your vision and show that you have that sort of outlier team in place.
Right. Okay, so that's a really good tip, I think. Show that you are this kind of innovative thinker in some way. But
And come prepared. Like too many, I think, don't do the work.
Can you give some example of some bad pitches that you've seen? Or? What's the worst
don't know. I think sometimes you hear a pitch that's completely like unfocused and unstructured, and you might not even get to your sort of team page. You might not even get to your bigger vision. You get stuck on something else and just talk without stopping. And you kind of want to leave room for a bit of a conversation as well, right? That's usually the best pitches where we're both talking and I'm asking questions, or you're asking questions, and we have a nice like pitch combined with sort of conversation as well.
Okay, so if you were to give an advice, you would actually, I guess, tell them to use the template that you have for a pitch deck, and
they don't have to, but if they don't know how to make a pitch deck, that's one way of doing it.
And then speak about the team, I guess, the problem, the potential, the team.
Yeah, for sure.
What should the core components be of the pitch?
No, that's it. Like, show me the problem you've defined and that first principle thinking around that problem. What was the unique insight you had? Why do you want to solve this? And why are you the right team to solve it? And then tell me a little bit about the solution you're building, and why it's, more than just an incremental improvement, that it is significantly different and better and can really, create something new. Maybe you're a market maker even. You've had such a unique insight that you even can create a new market, or you're disrupting, current legacy players with something really new and different. And then how big is the market? And I love when founders have done sort of a bottom-up market analysis, showing me that they're really, nitty-gritty about understanding, their customers. And even though it's all hypothesis, it helps me to show that they thought about it. What could a typical customer pay? How many customers are in our sort of sweet spot geographies? What does that mean in terms of a bottom-up market size? And don't just give me a big number. Oh, the e-commerce market is 2 trillion and we're going to take 1%. Okay, that's for me a little bit sloppy. Like, I like when you've sort of done the analysis, and then you're probably going to be wrong, but at least we're sort of setting up hypothesis and we're doing it in a data-driven manner.
What do you mean a data-driven manner? How do you do that?
Oh, you do the work. You interview potential customers. You do research about their problem. You do research about how much it's costing them today.
Right.
So you understand how much you might be able to charge.
Crunch the numbers in some way.
Exactly. You spend time understanding the customers you're targeting and the market you're taking on.
For me, at least, I've done so many bad decisions, and I thought, for example, Twitter will never work. For example, I thought it was the stupidest idea I ever heard as a product. And still it works. I mean, not perfectly, but still very good. Do you get surprised sometimes that, ideas you've seen or pitches you heard that you thought were horrible still work surprisingly well?
All the time. Yeah. I mean, we're super humble that we're going to get it wrong. I mean, the only thing we know sort of in tech is that the future is very uncertain. And we're, guessing what's going to be some of the most successful companies, but we don't know. And we're going to, be wrong all the time. And that's fine, as long as we get it right a couple of times.
Yes. Yeah. One single out of 20 or something. Yeah.
And I think it was, I forget what VC firm it was, but they shared data on the investment decision, if it was, if they were disagreeing on if to do an investment or if they were all agreeing on doing an investment. And then they compared that to the result 10 years later. And more often, the cases where you're disagreeing on an investment was more often successful. Because I think the Spotifys of the world or the Twitters of the world or Airbnbs of the world, they're not going to be obvious the first time you see it. Right. So it's always going to be hard to know if you're right or wrong. because I think it's such a revolutionary or transformative company you're about to build. And it can either be not successful or very transformative and very successful. And at the point of investment, it's almost good if it's not obvious. It's good if there's a bit of disagreement, because I think then that means it's a,
potentially disruptive.
Yeah, potentially disruptive company.
I'd love to also move into more generative AI and what
Me
you think
too.
about. Yes. But before that, I guess it's not only AI that you invest in, or what is your preferred type of companies that you do invest in?
Well, really anything. We're a generalist investor. We can invest in anything from biotech platforms to self-driving software like AIAW, or Volt was, delivery company. So we can really do anything. We maybe wouldn't go into sort of very advanced drug discovery, for one specific drug, or, something that was very sort of life science heavy. But otherwise, we can look at a lot of things, as long as it has that VC component of being really scalable and you have that potential of building something really big.
Okay, and I guess AI is one part of it at least, and I guess you call it deep tech, as what you mentioned a number of times. What do you mean with deep tech?
So typically what I mean with deep tech is that it's coming from some sort of research originally, and often they have some sort of proprietary innovation. And we have done over the years quite a bit of deep tech bets as well. And I think, speaking of sort of climate transition, I think we should continue doing that, and I think that will be needed for sort of a true climate solution, to continue doing a lot of deep tech bets in that area.
From a personal point of view, I'd just love to hear before, and then we move to more generative AI discussions, which are more fun. But speaking about a field that I wouldn't invest in, at least, it would just be fun to hear you speak about this, is blockchain technology. Do you invest in that, or do you have any thoughts about that type of company?
Yeah, we can. And we wouldn't invest in a token. But we could definitely invest in a company using blockchain technology. And we have another block in our portfolio that is using NFT to enable you to invest into music and the artists you love, and getting a rev share of that music. So I think for me, blockchain is just, I guess, like AI, an enabling technology. And if you use it in the right way, where it makes sense, where you get value from the blockchain, then we could definitely invest in it.
I'd love to. I'm thinking if I should go deeper into this question or not. But
let's move to generative AI.
Okay, let's do that. Okay, so do you have a preferred? If we just speak, do you have a preferred definition of what AI really is? I mean, everyone is disagreeing on this, and they have a personal way of thinking what AI is. Do you have a preferred way to say this is what I think when I hear AI?
Typically, when someone just talks about sort of AI company, I get a little bit, I guess because of all the hype right now, I get a little bit tired. I'm like, okay, but what are you actually using? Is it machine learning? Is it LLMs? Personally, I prefer when it's clearly defined and you're open with the fact that, we're actually using this type of machine learning to build this, rather than just sort of stamp AI on everything. We call it artificial intelligence, and we don't even know what intelligence is yet. So it's a little bit,
It's annoying. I mean, I've been in the field for a long time, and I don't think I've heard even a single person that agrees on the proper definition of AI.
How do you define it?
Oof, you shouldn't have asked that. But I have my preferred way. Actually, Okay, I take
Go.
36 seconds max. Otherwise, I can speak for...
It's going to be long.
No, but I actually like the original definition. It's from John McCarthy in 1956. He said AI is the science and engineering of building intelligent machines. Actually, John McCarthy, I found out recently, is my supervisor's supervisor. So my PhD supervisor, Erik Sandoval, his PhD supervisor was John McCarthy.
Oh, that's super cool.
So it feels like I almost know him. Anyway, I think it's good because it speaks both about the science or the knowledge necessary to understand how something works, but also the engineering of making something that comes of use, have value, building a product. And then you can speak about intelligence, and intelligence, in my view, is, according to what Franz Erscholle said in 2019, skill acquisition efficiency. So the more quickly you can acquire a skill to play chess, to separate dogs from cats in a picture, or to understand CAT scan images, or drive a car, the more intelligent you are. So it's different from knowledge. It's the efficiency of acquiring a skill that is the intelligence part. And then the latest type of deep learning, for example, can do that much more efficiently. Instead of manually having to type in the rules, you can simply learn by sending a lot of data to it, and even raw data with deep learning.
Because I guess you could question when it was just rule-based,
yes.
It wasn't really intelligence.
Well, it was very low
definition.
intelligence. Yeah, exactly, because then you have to, as a human, input all the rules and do it manually, and then it's super slow. So it's super inefficient way to do it. That means it's inefficient. But then with generative AI, moving into that, that's another type of AI that I think is complementary. I mean, it doesn't really remove or replace the other types of AI, but it adds a new type of application, a new type of companies, a new type of product that you can build that wasn't possible before. And if we take just, I think it's really fascinating what's happened in just the last half year or something after ChatGPT launched. We've seen how Microsoft has adapted their products using
so quickly
in an extremely fast pace. So they have the ChatGPT now in their operating system in Windows, in the web browser, in all the Office products. Google has done the same with Riveting AI. They have it in Gmail, in Google Photos, in all their workspace applications, and now we've seen Meta have done the same. And all the tech giants are basically in just a couple of months, less than a year, being able to integrate that into the core product. I've never seen as fast adoption before. Do you agree? Or
no, yeah, I've done the same reflection. Yeah. It's been incredible how fast it's gone. I guess from Microsoft it makes sense, since they're such a big owner in OpenAI. They would want to see that advantage, being able to adopt it quickly. But still, it's impressive.
And that comes, to the question then, how should we approach generative AI? And just thinking from an investment point of view, we know that the tech giants have a big advantage here. I mean, they can develop their models themselves. They have the knowledge in-house to also integrate that from an engineering point of view into their products. And they do that surprisingly fast. How can other startups catch up? And would you, as a startup wannabe, should you still have the courage to think that I can create a product, even though they have been able to adopt generative AI as quickly as they have?
I mean, just because Microsoft has built in AI into their products, that doesn't stop you from a startup to use AI as part of your solution, taking on a problem. It's back to basics again, right? Do you have that first principle insight into a massive problem that you want to tackle, and you see the need for a new type of solution that Microsoft hasn't solved? Yes. That's when you start a company, right? And if you can use latest sort of LLMs or whatever it might be to solve that problem, perfect. Then that's a great opportunity to go after. So I think it doesn't necessarily stop startups.
Could it even be the opposite, perhaps?
I think so too.
Yeah, it could be that actually now, when you have these kind of large language models or these foundational models that can now handle more than text, it can be image and audio and everything at once. Perhaps it actually makes it easier to come up with more innovative startup ideas, because it will simply start from very high level, so to speak, directly.
I agree. I think it will accelerate prototyping.
Yes. Yeah.
It will be a lot easier to iterate and get to an MVP product. Yes. So I actually think you might need less capital early on to build a company, but then you might need more capital later. Because that's also going to mean there's a lot more companies out there probably, because it's a lot easier to start a company in the vertical you're taking on. So you might have more competition down the line. So you might need to raise more money to sort of scale that company later on. But I think, yes, in the initial phase, you will need less, and you'll be able to prototype a lot faster, which is really valuable.
It is, right? Yeah. I'm almost thinking sometimes, you can take the whole cloud movement where, before, instead of having to buy your own machine and manage them, simply using the existing cloud providers, and not only them providing the machines, but all the tech stack they have above that in how to run applications in Lambda mode or whatnot, and run cloud or data pipelines and train models. Everything is provided as a prepared service. Makes it so much faster to come up with a prototype that you can start to experiment with. And perhaps you can think of these kind of foundational models as just another extension of having a set of tools, services that you can use to quickly just prototype on and build applications on top of.
It is similar to the cloud, I think, innovation in a way. Like, we weren't skeptical to someone building on top of Azure, or, we didn't talk about sort of AWS wrapper or whatever, but we're skeptical to someone just be building on top of OpenAI. And maybe that's a little bit narrow-minded. Maybe we need to look at this as a new sort of platform technology that people will just build on, prototype on.
Because very few startups can build their own foundational model.
No, and shouldn't.
Yes. No, it's extremely expensive, of course. So perhaps that is a new platform simply. Yeah. Then the one that can be the most innovative on using that platform for whatever problem that they identify, then that can be the edge. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Back to the basics there, like having that problem you want to solve. And also, I think more and more important to have access to relevant data that you want to use for your models. And also what we talked about earlier, having that talent density even more important, I think, in these sort of AI projects.
Cool. So we should be excited and happy that we have this kind of generative AI models in the open space, right?
I think so. I think we will see a lot more innovation and companies due to this.
I think so too. It simply speed up the phase of being able to quickly build their product. And even now, given that these kind of foundational models can even program for you, you can just simply tell them in English or Swedish, please build this kind of website, or please have this functionality and whatnot. And that's so much faster in prototyping, having a product being built. Right. Cool. Just moving a bit more into the post-investment phase. You mentioned a number of things before, like you have a recruitment coach, expert, or whatever you call it. What happens after someone successfully lands a deal with Inventure? What do you do then?
So we typically join the board of directors or an advisory board, like to really, really close and follow your development and be as helpful as we can be on your journey. We always make like a plan together, setting where do we need to be when we're going to raise the next round, and what are the key success factors getting there, and what are some of the short-term and longer-term goals that we want to reach. Right. And then align on sort of how to get there and how we can be helpful in you getting there. And that's something we do early on.
But you do join the board, you try to help them where they're with their strategy, I guess, in some way.
And sometimes, actually, it's about letting the founders do their thing as well, letting them be. Because you might not want an investor wanting meetings with you every second day when you're like heads down building your product and iterating. So it's about finding that balance of when you need to be leaning in and when you actually need to give the founder space.
Yes, and I can, I'm trying to phrase myself without really showing what I mean here, but in the past I've had experience with some investors that do micromanage, I would say, the company to an extent that is really bad. It can really be hurtful, I think, for a lot of companies. So how do you think about that balance? Do you? It sounds like you are thinking about this as well, not to get too detailed in their strategy.
Oh, of course, yeah. No, I think that's important. You need to let the founders do their thing as well and give them space when needed. And I think we often take pride in sort of trying to build like a very strong relationship of trust with founders, so they do feel they can also tell us, I need space. Yeah. And you have that, relationship where you can call each other and sort of say what you need, both ask for help or ask for space or share sort of both successes or challenges with you. So that's something we always try to do, and I think that's super important in the early phase. Being an investor, that you have that relationship of trust with.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
It's time for AI News, brought to you by AIAW Podcast.
Yeah, also, do you want to?
Now I think you can start. I have actually several short ones this week, so I want to stop with that.
But you want to take them last, or?
Yeah, I want to take them last.
So we haven't even talked about what's exciting to invest in generative AI.
You're not finished yet.
Okay, good. Because I want to hear your thoughts on that. I want good tips here on what to invest in. I have a couple of thoughts, but you guys probably have as well. Good.
We get back to that shortly.
Okay, good.
So this is just a middle break. So to speak.
Okay, let's do news.
Okay, so actually I was surprised and positively surprised that one of your ideas of a news article was Mistral. So I'll let you have that, and I'll take another one. But do you have any news article then that you would like to speak about? Something that happened recently in recent week that you find exciting?
The two things I wrote down was Mistral and them releasing their latest model, showing really good performance results early on, which is exciting because I've been a little bit, skeptical. Like, do we really need like a local European LLM? Does this actually add value? But looking just how much more efficient and cost efficient it seems to be, and it seems you can use it quite easily for sort of fine tuning your different use cases. It's quite exciting. And I'm a lot more sort of optimistic towards Mistral in general after seeing this launch.
I mean, you picked my top article as well. Yeah. I will have another one now, but I think also this is one of the top articles now. And the reason I think it is so interesting, and just to give some more background around this, it's a French company that they got funding, I think, this summer, a huge amount of funding.
100 million, in seed.
Yes, very early on. I think it's the biggest, like a record funding, at least for a European company.
Yeah.
But they also had funding from the French government, I believe, and then a number of other very knowledgeable people, like I think Eric Schmidt was there as well, the Google exec person, and a lot of other Google and Meta people. I think they had also one of the top persons from Meta that actually built or worked on Llama, the Meta model, coming there as well. So they have a very impressive investment team, and then building this model that actually is beating all the records. Even the small, only 7 billion parameter model, beating Llama 2, even at almost double the size with 13 billion. But I think what's extra fun about this, not only that it's also open, open for everyone to use, but it's actually a European one. And it's not an American company.
Yeah. And what excites you about the European angle?
Because we haven't seen that one before.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? I am so lacking.
Does that matter?
And missing.
Yeah.
Yes, I think so. Very much. I think there is a big, we usually call it an AI gap here. So there is a big gap to these kind of big tech giants that we have in US and China. They are so far ahead in terms of the evaluation and the money and the capital they have, the talent and knowledge that they have, the infrastructure they have, the data they have, the users they have, which makes they can build products that quickly get adoption extremely efficiently because they can simply integrate them, which actually adds a moat to an extreme.
I actually agree. I'm just trying to be a little bit provocative. No, but I can see that.
Yeah. So I'm really happy to see a European, and not one that is bought up by a tech giant. Like DeepMind was, European, but then it was bought up by Google.
Exactly.
But this one is still not acquired by a tech giant, and it is still a European startup, and I hope it stays like that.
Give it another year.
Yes, exactly.
No.
Yeah, that one I think is super fun and exciting, and anyone that wants to try to use AI in their own organization should really look into Mistral AI. And they have this kind of instruct model as well, which is fine-tuned for chat purposes, etc. Super cool.
What are some of the use cases or applications where you think their model will be especially good?
Yeah, I mean, I think many cases, but like summarization apparently was one that was surprisingly good, if I recall correctly. But then with the instruct version of the model, that means basically it's basically aligned with human values, with reinforcement and human feedback. So it can be used for whatever kind of chatbot experience you want to have. But then if you simply want to have it from a knowledge retrieval point of view and say, I have all this data in my internal company. I now want to have a way to just find that information quickly. This one is actually one of the best ones today that can do that without sending the data to OpenAI, Microsoft, or Google. So it seems surprisingly efficient.
And that should be a really important USP, like being able to keep the data in Europe.
Yes, yes, and also for a lot of companies, they have a lot of high security demands, and if you go to the medical sector or whatnot, you can send the data over to an American company, and you need to keep it safe and secure, and then you have to resort to these models. So having something that is open source in this way, we'll see what their business model will be. I guess they will add some kind of.
Because now it's free, right?
Yes.
The first one.
I haven't really seen what the business model should be or is. Have you heard anything about that?
No, I'm not sure. If the next one they'll launch this for adoption.
Yes.
Acquire sort of free users, and then they'll launch another one that they will charge for.
Because they got a lot of investment, and investors needs to get a return still, so they have a business model, but I haven't heard about it yet. No. I guess there will be some kind of enterprise license or whatnot going forward. Who knows?
Oh, for sure.
Awesome.
All right. So I have some variety of news, and I will make them very short. One is actually in your domain. Visa recently launched like 100 million. New generative AI venture fund that
Visa, the credit card company,
here in Europe.
It's actually and you can see it it's actually from US. So it's actually oriented towards companies that are developing AI technologies and applications that will impact the future of commerce and payments. And this is very interesting actually, because I had a fantastic lunch yesterday with one of my favorite people here in Stockholm as well, and we will have a discussion about that, because I have a question for you a little bit later on about the future of e-commerce and web pages. The second news was actually, I had a great conversation with one person from BP this morning. He will be coming on Data Innovation Summit and presenting. So he told me about something that I didn't know before, which is actually the first neural law in Chile. So Chile is the
BP,
first,
like the British Petroleum.
They have like an awesome guy who is working with ethics. I'm super happy. But Chile is the first country actually to become to legislate the neural technologies and include brain rights in its constitution, which means that technologies basically will need to respect the sovereignty of a person, physical sovereignty, their brain, and everything else. So you cannot develop or they cannot use any technology that can actually use the...
So Neuralink will work in Chile.
Exactly like that. So I think it's very, very... And it's amongst the first one. And the discussion that we had with this gentleman today, it was mind-blowing. It opened up my eyes so much. Because I thought that we are not there. But obviously there is already things that are happening so much within this area. Neurocomputing, neuro AI, etc. That I thought that it was worth to mention. On a positive note, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, which is Jamie Dimon, announced that basically the entire organization will be utilizing AI. They have identified 300 use cases internally, and he believes that the future of work is going to be less than around 3.5 days. So he is predicting that in short, people will have what they want right now, and that is a bigger and longer weekend. So I think that was cool. Back to the AI Act. There is still struggle there. Obviously, the European countries, some of them, including France, are now fighting the legislation, especially the part for biometric surveillance. and asking actually for some cases to be excused, including basically usage in for national security and military purposes. So we all know where this is going to go, right? And that would be my news.
Yeah, awesome.
Good ones.
I actually had a news that I wasn't able to speak about, but so I add it now, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
So actually Microsoft did a big launch. This is actually kind of old. It's like more than 1 week, so it's a bit old. But Microsoft released something that they hadn't really spoken about at all, and I think it's a really big thing. It's called AutoGen. And this is I haven't seen any press release or anything. And they had a big conference recently, and they didn't even mention this. And AutoGen basically is an open source framework for being able to have agents speaking to each other.
I saw this.
Yeah, I saw it.
This is super exciting.
It is exciting. And basically you can have one agent that is producing code, another that is evaluating the code or thinking from a security point of view, is this correct to do so? Something else that's evaluating from a business point of view, and then they start to interact.
You can have LLMs writing LLMs.
Yes, LLMs speaking to each other. So you build up this kind of discussion that they have between each other, and they just talk to each other until they come to some kind of conclusion, saying, okay, now we have some potential solution. And as I see, normally large language models, they are basically, as I call it, like the type 1, or this kind of, if you take the type 1 and type 2 systems that Kahneman thought about, or thinking fast and slow, or the human brain, we have reactive parts of our brain and more deliberative parts of our brain. So the frontal cortex is more deliberative, you think, you reason in a high level of abstraction. But then if you have your eyes or whatnot, they are reactive. You don't really consciously think even what you do. And that is really what I think the large language model, even ChatGPT, is like. It's more like the reactive part, the type 1 kind of system that doesn't do deliberative thinking. But now by adding this layer, like AutoGen is doing, and having these other layers using the models back and forth, this is reasoning on high level of abstraction. And this is adding the deliberative part of a system. And this is kind of exciting and scary.
Exciting.
But scary also at the same time, because if they start to produce code, I saw someone, building like, I think it was a game, like this snake game or something, and he started to interact with each other and build better and better versions of it without human intervention or human in the control. And that is also a bit scary.
Yeah, we talked about that before the pod, like when we start automating malware. Sort of. So it could almost be like a virus if it's initiated in the wrong, with malintent.
Yes.
And you have agents accelerating that. That's a bit scary. But I was excited from the perspective of, because I've seen enterprises now applying sort of GPT-4 for, searching company data through a chat interface. Hey, find me this number of the sales in France last week, or these sort of fact finding with a chat GPT interface. And I've seen, other slightly more advanced applications of GPT-4 for sure. But with this, I think this could be the start of almost your next layer of business intelligence operating system.
It's like an operating system of large language models.
Exactly,
right? Yes,
in a way that can help you make the right decisions on how to manage,
it is
whatever
amazing.
Really. It can be the core of your sort of brain in your company.
And also, if you look
exciting.
at Jan LeCun, in Meta, he has this idea about what a true AGI should be. And it should be some kind of controller that is different from the perception that you take. This is actually the controller in some sense, right? It's a controller that is doing discussions or sending messages between different parts of the brain or the AI systems, which are different systems, and then trying to control them in some ways to come to some conclusion. This is cool and a bit scary.
I'm excited to see what startups will do with this as well. Like, and you'll be able to combine internal data with external data and make a lot more advanced sort of.
And they'll pick and choose different AI because you can choose. It doesn't only support ChatGPT. It can be any kind of model that you can.
Combining different models
and integrate it with.
and put them against each other and see who performs best, and then choose the one. Super exciting.
Cool. Perhaps we should go back directly to your question then, and you spoke something about the different type of investments in generative AI. What do you mean with that, or what was your question around that?
And this is also where I'm really excited to hear you guys. But because we think a lot about sort of what will be some of the emerging sort of AI technologies that we should be investing in, and what shouldn't we be investing in. And I think so far, early on, I had the hypothesis about maybe more investing in shovels than shovels in a gold rush, rather than chasing after every sort of rare gold nugget.
Right.
But I think the more we're learning and the more this technology is developing, I think now we're definitely going to bet more also on the application layer.
So just to clarify what you said there, I mean, shovels in the sense that you are focused on the tooling to let other do stuff, but by investing in the tooling, you can actually make potentially more money.
Yeah.
And the question is if it should be more on the end user setting or on the tooling.
Should it be on the application layer or should it be further down the stack?
Yes.
And we have been investing in sort of the shovels of AI, I guess, in a way. We've invested in a feature store called the Hopsworks, where you can manage your features, which really can help you put sort of machine learning in production. And we've invested in Lab AI. I think you mentioned you're part of Greens, so you probably know Simon, the CEO there. I think they're a perfect example of selling shovels in a gold rush. Their platform enables AI builders to faster prototype and get their AI products out on the market.
And Hopsworks and Logical Clocks and I know Jim Dolling there from a long time. There are some really talented people there.
Yeah, for sure. But I think now, the more I learn, the more excited I'll be about taking a couple of bets on the application side. And I think especially one of the things I've looked a lot at recently is sort of developer tooling. And I think it's so many painful problems yet to be solved, where, generative AI, we've already seen that with the fast sort of early adoption of GitHub's Copilot, quite quickly reached hundreds of thousands of users. And I think that behavior is already starting to change, that coders are using. I think more now are using probably ChatGPT-4. You probably know this better than me.
Yeah, GPT-4 is still better than Copilot these days.
Exactly, But that also shows that there's opportunity for someone building something specifically for developers. If it's for testing to begin with, or debugging, or code review, whatever is that painful problem you want to take on, I think there's massive opportunity in this market. I mean, there's 30 million, 40 million developers out there. So building something that is super, super...
But I think the developer market is interesting here. And I'm a engineer at heart. I call myself number one an engineer, second a scientist, and thirdly an investor. But I love programming. I think it's super fun to build something and feel that I get something out that can be of use in some kind. But I also get a bit scared when looking at the code generation possibilities now with AI. Some people even say that in 5 years, it's questionable if we need that type of programming that we have today. Now, I see it more that before it was, you're required to go 5 years in school to be able to program and engineer software. Hopefully tomorrow or in a couple of years, basically anyone, without having to gone through years of schooling, can start to build software.
Yeah.
Right? So it will simply expand in the number of people that can do that otherwise rather complex task.
I think that's very true. And I think maybe sure junior developers might be replaced and automated away, but the slightly more skilled developers will suddenly be 10x better.
Yes.
And that's exciting. And that, again, will sort of generate a lot more innovation, I think.
I think that it's hard to even imagine what the developer space will look like. I think, just as we spoke about malware and how AI can help people that are potentially malicious and want to build, cybersecurity threats. This can also help all the startups, saying, I may have as an economist an awesome idea, but I can't program, but suddenly they can. And suddenly they can, through AI, build things that they couldn't do before. It's like, I want to sing karaoke, but I'm horrible at singing. But with a proper AI helping me, I can actually perhaps sing a song suddenly.
I think actually he can sing, but he's choosing Charlotte Pirelli, which is a little bit on a high C. So that is a different. It's about optimization.
There's an app that can change that probably for you.
Goran is a professional singer, so it's easy for him to say. So.
I'm very excited by this GPT Engineer, or the open source solution. Have you guys played around with that? And what do you think about it? Because I'm seeing the open source adoption, and Anton is such a brilliant guy.
Yes, I know him since.
What do you think about that solution?
Of course, very innovative, and super excited that it has been so popular. And being able to build up the structure of the software that you want to do. And then, it's like a first layer, I would say.
For sure.
And we will. I think that can expand to so many other things. The question is, in the future, what do you do? Let's say you have a car. Doesn't have to be Tesla or whatnot. Or let's say that you have even a toaster or a fridge, and you dislike, the way it turns off the light or the way the temperature is being increased or not. Now you don't, tell the developer of it, to please fix this in the next version. You can actually tell the fridge, please change the behavior in this way through natural language, and it will, self-correct and change. And this is like, I think it will be so revolutionary for so many products that anyone can start to change the product. And this GPT engineer, that is making people that may not have the proper engineering skills to know how to properly structure the first program and have the template for that. But thinking on the next level of that, where you don't only tell it to please build this for this type of game, but actually having the full structure and then say please just change this. I think that could be the next phase for like version 2 or version 5 of this. And then it suddenly say please just, you have this large code base, now just change it to fix this thing. And it will fix it.
Auto-correcting things and debugging things automatically. Yeah.
Yes.
Very cool. Maybe you can just have your Figma sketch and then, hey, build this for me eventually. Yeah,
so cool. For me, it's both sad and fun. I mean, it's very exciting because it basically opened up a space that has been closed down to only people that can program Python or C++ or Java or .NET or whatnot in the past. And now suddenly everyone can start to become a programmer, which is huge. But it's a bit sad for me because I spent so much time learning to code. But I think it's exciting times ahead, and it's hard to just envision what will happen.
But it's definitely one of the ones I'm excited about. The other one, I have a couple of that I wrote down. The other one that I think is pretty obvious is sort of replacing the knowledge worker, like using this for law, for consulting, for automating a lot of those sort of basic manual things where you can over time, like even replace the need of maybe again sort of a junior lawyer or to begin with. That's super exciting.
We are moving into the question about how AI will affect the job market, I think. And perhaps we can just speak a bit more about that. How will really the generative AI or AI in general affect the job market? And
I have some couple of questions just to make it a little bit more practical because we have an expert here with us. So one of my what I wrote as well in the notebook there. How do we define the Nordic AI market right now? That's the first question. The second thing is where do we see the most of the investments in which category of AI? Startup companies, the most investments are going right now. And then your personal thought, for example, how do you identify the potential of AI company, is that different from any type of different startup, like for e-commerce or whatever it's going to be? Because I believe that maybe the risks are a little bit bigger, as it is technology that is rapidly changing every day. I mean, we are having now AI news weekly, and you cannot keep up with all the things that are happening. So there are 3-4 questions there, and then of course we can chip in as well in the answering of that. But I think it's just, I would like to do a segment where we are dedicating, like, this is the Nordics, this is what is happening right now, this is what we believe that the investments are looking like, and then this is what we believe that we should invest in.
Okay. So that was a lot of questions.
So let's
Which one do we start with?
So it is only 4 questions, so I will repeat them. The first one, let's define the Nordic AI market.
Yeah.
Right. How many companies are there? What are the
startup perspective?
Startup perspective, yes.
Okay. I don't have numbers on how many sort of AI startups are out there. It's I think we definitely have a good talent base. We do have a heritage of, building quite successful data companies in the Nordics. MySQL was originally from the Nordics. Neo4j was from the Nordics. So we have a lot of talent that are sort of data savvy and have been through journeys. I mean, Hopswork that you mentioned is ex-MySQL. And so I think we have strong talent. We also have, on the academic side, a few really strong professors and spinning out sort of okay talent from the university as well, I'd say. Could still be better, but I think the Wallenberg family is doing a great job attracting international professors to Sweden to build out that talent base. So I think from a talent perspective, it's quite good, and we are seeing that. We are definitely seeing an increased number of AI startups. So far, of course, it's been a lot in the application layer, a lot of the sort of co-pilots for X, Y, Z. And there's definitely going to be opportunity there, but I think it's a little bit too early to say if it's how big exactly the Nordic sort of AI startup market is compared to other countries. I believe we're still a little bit behind when it comes to sort of talent density compared to France, that has been so exceptional over the years. Same with the UK and London, having that deep mind sort of heritage. And
it would be fun to hear your thoughts about how the government can step in and help Sweden, or in France, they did direct investments and put a lot of money into becoming basically an investor as a government as well. But let's park that discussion a bit.
Let's continue. But so as a investor fund, right? Do you see more and more AI company popping out and approaching you as a VC?
No, for sure. We've definitely seen an increase in number of sort of companies building on top of OpenAI.
Right. And is it more towards the data management practices, or is it going to be traditional data science, machine learning, or is it going to be Gen AI, for example? So in a simplistic point of view, right? Validio, for example, data management, right?
Yeah.
If we put it.
They've been around for a couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. So but I'm just giving examples of how we can think about data, traditional AI and Gen AI. Where would you put it? Which type of company mostly are knocking on your door and saying okay? So
I think lately it's been a lot more in the application layer.
Yeah.
Companies building on top of LLMs or on top of OpenAI in Copilot for design, if it's dev tools, looking to replace a junior development, looking to replace a knowledge worker in law, for example. Or in the creative space, using AI for avatar generation, or we invested in a company that uses AI to sort of create your sort of second brain for learning, so you can have all your content summarized and with your AI second brain. It's a company called Melon, and you can use that to become highly efficient in your upskilling journey, because we're all sort of, this as well, you're always have a long backlog of articles you want to read, or podcasts you want to listen to, or YouTube clips you want to see. And if you can store those in one place and then have your AI train on that data and use that to become your sort of second brain, helping you learn and reminding you of those articles and summarizing them for you, or even creating a tweet for you based on those. I think that's also very exciting to look how I can become a lot smarter with the help of AI.
And do you believe that more of these companies will be in the future asking for example, venture capital, or you think it's going to be more on the data management and product development in AI, in the application layer? Where would you put it?
So I think lately we've seen a lot more VC capital going into the application layer. But I think I'm still excited about solutions in sort of the data layer and MLOps layer, or automating data management of different kinds. I think there's still work to be done in that layer as well.
Yeah.
Or if it's using vector databases for a new kind of use case and application, how does that look? And what sort of new ways of working will we see out of that technology? So, yeah.
I believe that is the that will be my as well understanding, because I think the application layer is the hottest, right? That Visa is investing 100 million in the application layer, if you see it, so it's completely normal.
It's a lot more crowded, and if you look at the Y Combinator companies lately, there's a lot of these co-pilots for XYZ.
Yes, I imagine.
A lot
Because
of these companies.
It makes sense because it's the easiest way how to make money, right?
Yeah.
And those companies will be much more profitable than a company that is developing LLM, like large language model from the scratch.
And there will be opportunity there, just like, when the mobile phone came and you had the first app store, applications.
Exactly.
Of course, it was a little bit hard earlier on to know which apps were going to be successful, but of course there's going to be success, just like we saw in apps. Well.
And my the last question was actually, so if we are, a company X is coming to your organization, and that is either application layer or generative AI or a traditional AI company. So do you see, is there a difference when it comes to evaluating those companies, comparing to a traditional startup, let's call, from e-commerce or, okay, Spotify will not put it because it's a little bit different.
No, I think we always go back to basics. Team, potential, the problem you're solving, even with these companies. Maybe I would say we look a little bit extra at sort of product velocity, since it will be so competitive. You have to be convincing enough that you can build something really amazing. And if everyone is building on top of OpenAI, what will be the big differentiators? Well, your UI, your design, your, all the things that have always been important, but the look and feel of your product and how you actually add value to your customers. So product speed is definitely more important. Go to market and nailing that quickly enough, and that we believe the founders have what it takes, and the potential of the problem they're solving is, prioritized and big enough to get that sales motion speed as fast as possible. Definitely important. Can you find networks effect or community effects, or that's been one of the success factors of LabLab with their massive community. They create sort of virality as they grow. So finding those hacks to be able to grow really quickly, since there will be others building the same sort of solutions out there.
I guess that's the big question, how do you differentiate oneself once everyone is basically starting to use foundational AI models as like a component that you have in any kind of product, and becoming like a norm that, of course, you have some kind of foundation model that can understand text, images, and audio. And then what is really the edge, the outlier of a product then?
I guess it will be the value that you're providing to customers, right?
Yeah.
It's the same like when you mentioned the iPhone and opening the App Store. So you have the platform, you can create the app, but some apps fail and some are very successful. So depending on
it's
what
like
kind of
Oliver said, when he was here, it's still the same kind of criteria. Like it's just, is it a problem? Yeah. Does it have some kind of product market fit? Will it be of value for some users?
How big is the
That's
problem?
what I said.
Yes.
You have to go back to basics. It's not different just because it's AI. And I think it's important to note that LLMs or Gen AI, that's never a reason for why now. I don't think that's necessarily always a good sort of argument. You still need to make sure, you tackle a problem where this can be a significantly better solution using Gen AI. It's still the same sort of logic as with any other company. Yeah.
Last question, and that is not my
question. You said that 3 times now, but okay.
Yeah.
I had 4 questions, man. I posed it, but I have a question from a reader, actually, from a viewer. This is from Larry. So it's about like early mid-stage companies, basically, where the focus is on short-term sales and heavy client prototyping. He says, like, with limited sales bandwidth, how do they solve the long-term and high-risk business development initiatives, and does venture capital help lean this challenge?
Does venture capital help you sell?
So I guess it's like, so you're in a early mid-stage company, you're developing a product and you're trying to sell. It's not going it's going slow, but you still need like quite a lot of money basically for or heavy business development plans. For example, we want to grow, I want to have 6 salespeople, I don't know, I need a couple of developers, I need to reach out to new markets or whatever it is. So I'm just translating. I guess that is what is the question, and how can VCs help in that?
I guess one way is through money. Like by raising capital, you can build out your growth team. You can hire the salespeople and the marketing people you need to expand your services somewhere else. So that's one. And then, of course, we've seen, one of the advantages having an experienced VC on board is we've seen this done in 100 companies. So with no sort of common pitfalls as you're expanding your go-to-market.
So the experience behind the fund or the VC.
For sure. So hopefully we can help guide you in sort of avoiding some of the common mistakes and help, guide you into a good sort of go-to-market strategy without telling you what to do, but like asking good enough questions and helping you find that go-to-market plan that makes sense for your company.
Thank you.
Awesome. And I see the time is flying away here, and we're trying to keep this not too long kind of podcast. So perhaps we can move a bit more into philosophical or to answer questions. And just thinking about what we spoke about before is we can see that, systems, products, technological solutions is getting more and more cognitive, if you call it that. They can at least work with large amounts of data in a certain way. They can perceive and understand things rather well. They can do even creative tasks surprisingly well. So I guess one question, thinking 5-10 years ahead is, what will or should humans focus on, and what should our systems focus on? And I have one way that I usually phrase it, what AI is good for and what humans are good for. And I'd just like to hear, your thoughts about this, and then thinking specifically about the job market and what companies to invest in, given that AI will take over some of the tasks, at least that humans did it in the past. So for me, at least, AI is really good at, as soon as you have some large amount of data that you have to go through, that's really bad for a human. They can't go through thousands of pages of text in a quick way, or hours of videos or whatnot, but an AI can do that. And it can find, just a ChatGPT that basically have all of internet, packed into a number of computers, and it can just, recall parts of that huge memory that it has in a way that no single human ever could. It can basically process data very efficiently. So the ability to just go through a huge amount of data is something that AI seems to be really good at, and humans don't. And then the question is, what is humans good at then? Well, I would say that, trying to do the high-level reasoning is still something that the humans do better. So my thoughts on this is, if you want to think about the best company to invest in should be in 5 years, it's something that use AI for what it's good for, parsing a huge amount of data in a shallow way, and then still having users, humans, I guess users are usually humans at least still, that they are doing something they are good at, going through or doing the analysis in a deep way, putting things in a context, and hopefully making a decision. Okay, that was a very long-winded question, but what do you think will happen? What kind of companies and what kind of products? Perhaps that's a better phrasing. What will the products be in the future that have humans as a user when AI takes over some of the roles? Sorry for the very fluffy kind of question, but...
So what kind of products will have humans as users, or what kind of jobs will humans have in the future? Which way do you want to go?
I mean, I'm thinking from an investment point of view, if you have a company that wants to be successful in 5+ years ahead, given that we will have other products potentially, that have really cognitive AI systems in them that can be creative as well and produce a lot of things, I guess we should, as an investor, think about products that are proper in 5 years and suitable for humans then.
Sure. And I think a couple of ones that I thought about is sort of entertainment.
Good.
Especially as maybe they're solving some of our job for us, so we have more free time and go down to 3.5 days of working. We'll have more time for entertainment.
I think that will be a huge sector.
Huge sector.
Yes.
Almost like you probably can have your own personalized entertainment system where you can tailor your book or your video to your preferences, and the AI can almost create that experience based on what I like and know that. So that's one, I think.
Yes, very good.
Another one is, we're unfortunately, our health is deteriorating, or at least, average life expectancy in the US is going down, and our health is, at risk. We're living longer, but maybe not as healthy. At least here we're living longer. But using AI, I think is super exciting in sort of biotech or proteomics or genomics or
precision medicine.
Personalizing our health experience, and those kind of solutions will definitely pop up, and that's also a very positive and optimistic sort of future scenario where AI can be part of accelerating drug discovery and solving some of the health problems we have today.
So I guess humans, even if it's 5 or even 50 or 500 years ahead, will have need for entertainment. So I think that's a long-lasting kind of product and type of system that we need. Health is also, as you said, something that will never end. We'll always have need for humans that need better health.
Climate tech maybe as well.
Climate, education perhaps as well.
Yeah, future of learning. I think we're just now looking at an application in the future of learning where LLMs are so good at personalizing my learning experience. And suddenly the Bloom to Sigma problem, the students that have tutors get so much better in school compared to the average student that doesn't have that access. And now with generative AI, you can have an AI tutor available for almost anyone. Yeah. And that's also something I'm very, on the optimistic side, very excited about.
Yeah, I guess it's a question about how to find products to invest in that will have 5+ year sustainability in an AI first or AI safe way, so to speak, right? That some kind of product that still humans need.
And we talked about cybersecurity early on, because I think there we're seeing AI both increasing the problem, increasing the market size of cyber crime, and it's estimating to cost us trillions and trillions of dollars in the next couple of years.
So AI both for offensive and defensive purposes.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah, for sure. So that's definitely, I think, going to be around for a long time.
We'll see how much humans has to do with that, or how much AI can do.
AI battling AI.
Yes, exactly.
Probably. That's true.
Autogen, in cybersecurity space. Oh, Jesus, that's scary.
But both on malware and on the monitoring and solution and remediation as well side. Very exciting.
Cool stuff. So if we go even more philosophical, and I'm not sure which side you're on, if you think about your kids, I'm not sure. Do you listen to the summer talk by Max Tegmark, for example?
Yeah. And I've read, Life 3.0 as well.
What do you think about his summer talk, when he said his children may not even be living potentially?
Yeah, he's such a positive guy when you listen to.
Normally,
he sounds
yes.
so happy, and then he's talking about these awful sort of outcomes. So I tend to disagree with the most sort of dystopian scenarios. Actually, the very first time I got into AI was about 4 years ago, when a friend of mine dragged me along to a Nick Bostrom debate with Daniel Dennett on sort of will AI be able to mimic consciousness. And then I read his book on superintelligence. And I guess the problem here is it's impossible to say it's never going to happen, that we're never going to reach AGI, because I think...
What do you think?
We will get there, but I don't think it's going to happen in the next, 50 years. I'm more pessimistic on it happening near term. I don't think it's going to happen with the current LLMs. I think we'll need a new type of model structure for this to happen. That can still pop up, but I haven't seen it. What's your year?
I still more on the Ray Kurzweil side, 2029.
2029. Wow, that's 5 years away. Jesus. Then we're definitely screwed.
No, that's the point. Okay, so this is really the question. Are we really screwed? And I think this is, so many people are speaking in this way. Just because something more intelligent than us potentially pops up, does it mean it has to kill us?
No, true.
We have so many other dumb things in our world. We don't kill all the ants that we have. We don't kill all the dogs. We don't kill all the horses that we see in the world. Why should we?
We've killed off quite a bit of animals. They're not as smart as us. It's a mass distinction out there.
I think we have killed a lot.
We've killed a lot.
Yes.
I mean, gorillas wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for us.
We have saved a lot of animals as well,
and they're pretty intelligent, yeah.
We do keep a lot of species alive just because we want to have them alive. So, of course, if something gets in our way, we may choose to say, I just killed this mosquito right now because it's in my way. But to say that something that is significantly more intelligent than us would necessarily want to, perform some kind of human extinction, that's strange to me. And I would even say that the more intelligent something becomes, the more civilized something becomes, the higher probability is that they will rather have a more civilized manner. So usually the way I shouldn't... let me phrase the way stop the way I speak about it. You spoke about the dystopian future, and if we just take these two extremes, one is the dystopian kind of Terminator future. Once something becomes out of control, we have the singularity that Ray Kurzweil, I think, says 2040 for when that will potentially happen. And that means basically we are out of control. We can't even stop it. I mean, we can have superintelligence earlier, but we can still control it. But there will be a point where we potentially cannot control it anymore, similar to Terminator and Skynet and these kind of things. And that could potentially happen. And then we have the other utopian future. I call it sometimes, or I think Elon Musk called it the future of abundance, where potentially our children will look back and say, 50 years back when my parent was, alive, they had to work 40 hours a week. That's crazy. And they had to do horrible jobs that they hated to do. And they went and had horrible, problems with their health. And it was
they worked for money.
Sorry?
They worked for money.
Yeah, they worked for money. That's so stupid. I mean, that could potentially also be the future. And that could be more of a paradise kind of future where we do the things that we choose to do, and we don't have to work for roof on top of our heads or for food or for education. That will all exist.
No, I also think this is possible as a future scenario for sure. And I think it's Catherine Marshall who talks about how the future of the workers we actually value the most might be the workers we're valuing the least today. That the caretakers of our children or the nurses of the world or the ones taking care of our elder care, they will be the most highly valued in society.
But they were, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, until 30 years ago, even 20 years ago, they were the most paid people. accomplishment for you to be a doctor or to be a policeman or to be a teacher and etc.
Yeah.
And that has been for 80, 100 years or maybe even more. And then in the last 20, 30 years of increased globalization and capitalism, this has basically just vanished. So I'm looking forward for that to come back.
Same. I hope that will happen, and I hope we'll find a way of distributing the wealth.
Yes.
So as a sci-fi nerd, I'm a little bit worried about the sort of altered carbon scenario, where there's a couple of very wealthy, such as Elon Musk, controlling both a lot of the AIs out there and owning them, and a lot of the wealth.
I certainly agree that not more people are speaking about the extreme concentration of power that we now see, for one, in the tech giant companies that we have. But if we take a single person, there is not a person on the earth or in history that have had so much power that Elon Musk has these days. You know,
influencing wars, even.
It's and that's really scary.
Yeah.
If he were to go...
a perfect super villain in a James Bond movie.
Maybe.
Perfect, man. He only need a cat.
But if he wanted to go really, really bad, you know, he could really inflict a lot of harm. And I mean, hope that won't happen.
And today, I guess, we're only seeing acceleration of the extreme sort of wealth concentration. We're not seeing indications that, you know, automation is...
True. I agree. I mean, we're seeing increased concentration of wealth, and that's really bad. But potentially, with superintelligence, we will reduce our need for wealth. We will reduce our need for, you know, earning money. We don't perhaps need to go to work anymore, and perhaps that can be an equalizer.
And this is such a Western thing to talk about, right? Because we are talking about this in the same time there are still 2.1 billion people who have no access to water and sanitary premises, right?
But imagine if AI helped with the science. But if AI helped with the science to, you know, produce water, drinkable water from the air. I saw some really cool project
that is also available right now. You have like a lot of good methods for desalination and etc. So it's not that the technology is already here. It's just distribution of money and power and where do you want to invest.
I think if Hans Rosling was here, he would argue with me. He'd say, yeah, sure, we're seeing more concentration on wealth, but we're also, if we're looking 100 years back, we're seeing everyone's getting a better life standard.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So we are seeing an increase in the general sort of standard of living and wealth.
It's just like it has a delay in some countries.
It does, yeah. And it's still very unequally spread, yeah.
All right. I mean, I think that's an awesome ending. We are seeing, like Hans Rosling usually said, you know, the life quality that we have today is significantly better than we'd ever had in the past.
Yeah.
And with AI in the future, perhaps that will even improve much further.
We can do this podcast every day. Give us 5 years.
Yes,
Nice.
Awesome. It's been a true pleasure to have you here, Rebecka.
Thanks so much for inviting me.
It's
been really fun.
I'm looking forward to hearing more, perhaps after the discussions here, and speaking even more about some of the intricates and gossip I know of some people that I know you know. That I would love to hear.
Yeah, I only got through 2 out of my 10 exciting areas in AI, so we can continue with those ones afterwards.
Awesome. Nice. Thank you very much, Rebecka.
Thanks so much, guys.
And it's over.